Omega sent a watch to the moon, timed the Olympics for over 90 years, and built the most certified movement standard in the Swiss industry. None of that stopped the internet from calling it the brand you settle for when Rolex says no. The catalog runs from $3,500 to six figures, and the logic at each tier is completely different. These are the 7 levels. Level 1, the entry point, the Omega de Ville, Prestige, and the Seamaster Aqua Terra in its smaller case sizes live here. Retail prices start around $3,500 and extend to approximately $5,500 depending on case size, dial, and strap configuration. The de Ville Prestige is Omega's dress watch. Thin case, clean dial, leather strap or steel bracelet, no diving bezel, no chronograph pushers, no complications beyond the date. It exists to tell the time and look appropriate doing it. The de Ville does not appear in watch forums or on YouTube thumbnails. It does not generate excitement in the collector community. It does exactly what a dress watch is supposed to do, which is disappear on the wrist and never draw attention to itself. Here is what most people miss about Level 1. The movement inside a de Ville Prestige is not an afterthought. Omega equips these watches with coaxial escapement movements that are regulated to master chronometer standards. That means the $3,500 de Ville on your wrist is certified to a higher accuracy standard than a Rolex Oyster Perpetual at a higher price point. The Omega is tested by Metas, an independent Swiss federal testing agency, not by the brand itself. The testing is more rigorous. The price is lower. The brand recognition is weaker. That gap between certification rigor and market perception is the single best value proposition in the entry-level luxury watch market. The Aqua Terra in its 34mm and 38mm configurations also starts at this level. The textured dial, inspired by teak decking on sailing yachts, gives the watch more visual presence than the de Ville without crossing into sports watch territory. It bridges dress and casual in a way that very few watches at this price manage. The best move at Level 1 is the 38mm Aqua Terra with the green or blue dial on a steel bracelet. It punches significantly above its price, and it is available. No waitlist, no games. Level 2. The everyday icons. The full-size Aqua Terra at 41mm and the Seamaster 300 meters live here. Retail prices range from $5,500 to approximately $7,500. This is where most Omega buyers land, and it is where the brand's identity starts to assert itself. The Seamaster 300 meters is the watch that Pierce Brosnan wore as James Bond in GoldenEye in 1995. That single casting decision repositioned Omega overnight. Before GoldenEye, Bond wore a Rolex. After GoldenEye, Bond wore an Omega. The partnership has continued through every subsequent film, and Omega has produced limited edition Bond Seamasters for nearly every release. The current 300M features a ceramic bezel with a laser-engraved diving scale, a wave pattern dial that references Omega's earlier quartz Seamaster designs, and a helium escape valve at 10 o'clock. It is water-resistant to 300 meters and powered by Omega's master chronometer caliber 8800. Here's the uncomfortable truth about Level 2. The Seamaster 300 meters is a better specified watch than the Rolex Submariner in almost every measurable category. Higher magnetic resistance, equal water resistance, a longer power reserve, an independently certified accuracy standard that Rolex does not submit to, and it costs roughly $3,000 less at retail. The Submariner still commands higher secondary market prices because brand positioning and scarcity management outperform specifications in the luxury watch market. That is not a commentary on the watches. It is a commentary on the market. The 41mm Aquaterra at this level is the quiet powerhouse. It does not carry the bond association. It does not have a diving bezel or a helium escape valve. What it has is a versatility that the Seamaster 300 meters cannot match. The Aquaterra transitions from a suit to a wetsuit without changing straps. It reads as a dress watch in a boardroom and a sports watch on a boat. That range is rare at any price point and nearly unmatched below $8,000. The Aquaterra also benefits from a design detail that most people overlook. The case is thinner than the Seamaster 300 meters by a meaningful margin. It sits lower on the wrist. It slides under a shirt cuff without catching. For a buyer who wears a watch every day in a professional environment, that thinness is worth more than 300 meters of water resistance they will never test. Buy the watch that fits the life you actually live, not the life the marketing department imagined for you. Level 3. The professional tier. The Seamaster Planet Ocean, the Seamaster Professional 300, and the Modern Heritage Seamaster 300 live here. Retail prices range from $6,500 to approximately $10,000. The Planet Ocean is Omega's serious dive watch, 600 meters of water resistance, a unidirectional rotating bezel in ceramic with a liquid metal diving scale, a thicker case built to handle genuine professional diving conditions. The Planet Ocean competes directly with the Rolex Sea Dweller in function and significantly undercuts it in price. The Seamaster 300, distinct from the 300 meters, is a heritage-inspired diver that references Omega's original 1957 Seamaster with a vintage-proportioned case, a broad arrow handset, and a sandwich dial construction that gives the loom plots depth and dimension. It is one of the most aesthetically refined dive watches available from any brand at any price. Here is what separates Level 3 from Level 2. At Level 2, you are buying an Omega that works for daily life. At Level 3, you are buying an Omega that was designed to survive conditions your daily life will never include. The difference is engineering margin. The Planet Ocean is overbuilt for 99% of its owners. That over-engineering is the point. You are paying for capability you will not use, and that surplus capability is what makes the watch feel substantive on the wrist. Heft, thickness, and the satisfying click of a dive bezel rotating through 120 positions. These are tactile experiences that justify the engineering budget, even if the Ocean never will. The best value at Level 3 is the Seamaster 300. It costs less than the Planet Ocean, carries the same master chronometer certification, and has a design language that references Omega's most important decade of dive watch production without being a literal reissue. It is the watch that collectors point to when they want to explain why Omega's design team is one of the best in the industry. The broad arrow hands, the domed sapphire crystal, and the lollipop seconds hand create a profile that is immediately identifiable from across a room without relying on a bezel color or a nickname to do the work. The watch sells itself on proportions. If you are choosing between the Planet Ocean and the Seamaster 300, the question is not which is better. It is whether you want the watch that can survive professional diving, or the watch that looks like it remembers when professional diving was young. Both are correct answers. But the Seamaster 300 is the one that collectors keep coming back to after the novelty of the heavier watch fades. Level 4. The Speedmaster. The Speedmaster deserves its own level because it operates by different rules than everything else in the Omega catalog. The Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch is the most historically significant chronograph in existence. NASA selected it in 1965 after subjecting chronographs from multiple brands to a battery of tests simulating spaceflight conditions. Extreme temperatures, vacuum, shock, acceleration, humidity, decompression. The Speedmaster was the only watch that survived everything. It went to the moon on the wrists of Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong during Apollo 11 in 1969. It timed the engine burn that brought the Apollo 13 crew home alive. It is the only watch ever qualified by NASA for extravehicular activity. Retail prices for the current moon watch range from $6,600 for the Hesselite crystal version on a strap to $8,000 for the sapphire sandwich on a bracelet. Secondary market prices for standard production models sit near or slightly below retail, which means you are buying a moon watch at close to fair value in either market. Here's what most people get wrong about Level 4. The Speedmaster is not expensive by the standards of its competition. A steel Rolex Daytona retails for over $15,000 and trades on the secondary market at double that. A Speedmaster Professional retails for less than half the Daytona's list price and trades at roughly retail. Both are manually wound chronographs in steel cases with tachymeter bezels. The Daytona has a more refined movement and a case that sits flatter on the wrist. The Speedmaster went to the moon. The market prices the refinement over the achievement. That tells you everything about how luxury watch markets actually work. The crystal choice at Level 4 generates genuine debate. The Hesselite version uses the same acrylic crystal that went to the moon. It scratches. It can be polished with polywatch. It has the warm, slightly distorted look that purists prefer. The sapphire sandwich uses sapphire on both the front and the display case back, allowing the wearer to see the movement. It is more scratch-resistant and more practical. The community splits roughly evenly, and both camps are correct. One is buying authenticity to the historical reference, the other is buying durability for actual daily use. The watch is the same. The philosophy is different. Level 5. Limited editions and special references. This is where Omega leverages its history more aggressively than any other brand in the industry. The Snoopy Speedmaster, the Ultraman Speedmaster, the Tintin Speedmaster, the Ed White reissue with the Caliber 321 movement, the first Omega in space, the Dark Side of the Moon in ceramic. Each of these watches tells a specific story, carries a specific design variation, and generates a specific collector demand curve. Retail prices range from $10,000 to approximately $15,000 for most special editions. Secondary market prices diverge wildly. The 2020 Snoopy Speedmaster retails for approximately $11,100 and trades on the secondary market for roughly double that. The 2018 Ultraman sold out online in under 2 hours and has maintained a significant premium ever since. The Tintin, born from a failed licensing deal with the Tintin publishers, is one of the most sought-after modern Speedmasters, despite having no official connection to the character it is named after. Here is the uncomfortable truth about Level 5. Omega is the only major Swiss watch brand that actively cultivates its own limited edition secondary market. Rolex does not produce limited editions. Patek Philippe produces them rarely. Omega produces them consistently, in quantities calibrated to sell out quickly, but not so limited that the market cannot sustain trading activity. The strategy is deliberate. Each limited edition creates a scarcity event that generates media coverage, social media content, and collector urgency. The watches sell out. The secondary prices rise. The brand's cultural relevance refreshes. This is not a criticism. It is an observation about market structure. Omega has built an engine that converts historical moments into products and products into premiums. The Snoopy Award from NASA becomes a watch. The Apollo 13 mission becomes a case-back animation. Ed White's spacewalk becomes a movement reissue. Each conversion is legitimate in its historical reference and strategic in its market execution. Understanding both of those things simultaneously is what separates an informed buyer from an excited one. The best move at level 5 is the Ed White reissue with the caliber 321. It is the most mechanically interesting Speedmaster currently in production. The caliber 321 is the actual movement that went to space in the 1960s, recreated by Omega using period-correct tooling and architecture. It is priced higher than the standard Moonwatch, but lower than the Snoopy on the secondary market, and it offers something the Snoopy does not: a movement with its own standalone story. Level 6. Precious Metals. Omega produces Speedmasters, Seamasters, and DeVille's in gold, combining their proprietary Moonshine Gold, a pale yellow gold alloy, Sedna Gold, a rose gold alloy that resists fading, and Canopus Gold, a white gold alloy with a brighter finish than standard white gold. Retail prices range from $15,000 to over $50,000 depending on the model, the metal, and the complication. A gold Speedmaster. Moonwatch is one of the more unusual propositions in the luxury market. The watch that went to the moon was stainless steel. Every NASA-qualified Speedmaster was steel. Putting the Moonwatch in gold strips away the tool watch identity that makes it meaningful and replaces it with a material statement that contradicts the watch's origin story. Some buyers find the contradiction appealing. Others find it incoherent. Here is the uncomfortable truth about level 6. Omega gold watches compete directly with Rolex gold watches, and in that matchup, Rolex wins the secondary market decisively. A gold Rolex day date holds its value better than a gold Omega DeVille. A gold Rolex Submariner holds its value better than a gold Omega Seamaster. The craftsmanship is comparable. The materials are comparable. The market perception is not. Gold amplifies brand hierarchy. If you are buying a gold watch to wear and enjoy, Omega at level 6 is an excellent proposition, often delivering the same alloy innovation and finishing quality at a lower price. If you are buying a gold watch with any expectation of resale value, the data points toward Rolex. The Sedna gold alloy is worth knowing about. Omega developed it specifically to address the fading problem that affects rose gold over time. Standard rose gold contains copper and copper oxidizes. Sedna adds palladium to the alloy, which stabilizes the color and keeps the rose tone consistent for decades rather than years. It is a genuine material science innovation, and it is the kind of detail that justifies the premium for buyers who care about the longevity of the metal, not just the look of it. Level 7. Vintage and collector grade. At level 7, Omega becomes an entirely different market. The watches that trade here are no longer current production. They are vintage references from the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s. And the rules that govern their pricing have almost nothing in common with the rules at any other level. A vintage CK2998, the first Omega in space, trades for $30,000 to $60,000 depending on condition and documentation. An original pre-moon Speedmaster reference 105.012 or 145.012 in correct configuration can exceed $100,000. A tropical dial, Seamaster 300 from the 1960s with the right patina commands premiums. That would have been inconceivable 15 years ago. Here is what most people do not understand about level 7. Vintage Omega is the most undervalued segment of the entire Swiss watch collecting market, relative to the historical significance of what is being traded. A Speedmaster that is mechanically identical to the watches that went to the moon trades for a fraction of what a Rolex Daytona from the same era commands. The Daytona never went to space. It was a racing chronograph. The Speedmaster survived NASA qualification testing and performed a critical role in one of the most famous survival events in spaceflight history. The Omega costs less because Omega's brand management did not manufacture scarcity the way Rolex did, and because the collector community did not build the same nickname economy around vintage Omega references. That gap is the opportunity. Vintage Omega is priced on market perception. The historical credentials are priced at a discount to comparable Rolex credentials. Whether that gap closes or persists depends on factors no one can predict with certainty. But the gap exists, and informed buyers have been quietly accumulating vintage Speedmaster references for the better part of a decade because the underlying narrative is stronger than the current pricing reflects. The Snoopy editions function as a bridge between levels 5 and 7. The 2003 Blue Snoopy and the 2015 Silver Snoopy are now old enough to carry collector premiums based on age, scarcity, and condition rather than just hype. The 2003 edition, limited to 5,441 pieces, a number derived from the duration of the Apollo 13 mission, now trades at multiples of its original price. These watches are not yet vintage, but they are aging into a category that will eventually overlap with level 7. Patience, as always, is a position. The one collector who shaped vintage Omega vocabulary more than anyone else was Chuck Maddox, who died in 2008. Maddox coined the names for dozens of vintage Omega references: the Darth Vader, the Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi, the Holy Grail. His naming system persists as the primary vocabulary for vintage Omega identification. One collector built the language. The language outlived the collector. The references he named still trade under his terms. At level 7, buy what you can verify. Authentication matters more here than at any other level because the difference between correct and incorrect parts on a vintage Speedmaster can be 5 figures. Original dials, original hands, original bezels, correct serial to reference matching. If you cannot verify these things yourself, work with a specialist who can. The education is not optional. It is the price of admission. So where does that leave you? The sweet spot for the buyer who actually plans to wear their Omega sits between levels 2 and 4. $5,500 to $8,000. A Seamaster 300 meters that outspecifies its competition. An Aquaterra that transitions across every dress code. A Speedmaster professional that carries the most documented history of any watch in production. Below that range, Level 1 offers a value proposition that the rest of the market has not caught up to. Above that range, Levels 5 and 6 are for buyers who understand what they are purchasing and why. Level 7 is for buyers who have done the homework and are ready to act on a market inefficiency that may not persist forever. Omega is not the brand you buy instead of Rolex. It is the brand you buy when you understand what Rolex actually charges for and you decide you want to pay for something different. The history is deeper. The access is broader. The specifications are equal or superior. The secondary market returns are lower. Every one of those facts is true simultaneously, and the buyer who holds all of them in their head at the same time is the buyer who makes the best decision. That has always been the point. Not excitement, not hype, not a wait list that flatters your patience. A clear-eyed understanding of what you are buying and what you are buying it for. Everything else is marketing. And Omega, to its credit, gives you enough real substance to cut through it.